come up with conclusions that bump up hard against what's already established in the literature. So, and I love it because Glaser and Strauss, who developed I think they were like spirited in terms of my approach. They said, use names that resonate with people. And so one of the ways we measure the accuracy of our theories is resonance, fit. Do people see themselves in their lives and their stories and the narratives that you're creating with your data? And I love that, because if it doesn't ring true, then...
Which is kind of fascinating for me also, because the entrepreneur in me and the writer in me looks at that model, and that's the model that actually builds the most successful businesses. But it's the exact opposite model that most entrepreneurs start with. Most entrepreneurs get an idea for a product or a service or solution, and then they go looking for a market. Right. And then they're like, okay, who are the people that we can sell this to? And whereas, rather than saying, okay, let me just reach out to a community that I feel like I want to be in service of, and have really deep, intense conversations with them, and maybe I'm part of that community. Very likely I am. So let me start with my own experience, and then with the experience of people in this community, and find out, what are they feeling? What are they not feeling? What's the conversation that's already going on in their head? And can I build messaging and solutions around that in a way that can make me of further service to them, and in doing so, create a living, a career, a business that builds around that. And in my experience,
I love that.
Those are the people where not only individually do you really come alive, but those are the businesses that have profound impact in the world and that kind of catch fire, because you're not trying to sell something to anybody. You're simply caring about them so deeply that you take the time to understand what they need and then just giving it to them. And so many times people don't do that. And so from the business side, it's this interesting overlay with what you're saying, the approach to how you research.
I have never thought about that until this exact second. But I love that, and I think it's exactly grounded theory, because what's interesting, I never thought it. Entrepreneurship, I think of, I've got a really cool thing.
Right, exactly. Let me go find somebody who wants it.
Yeah. But in grounded theory, there's the whole thing is, it's called trust and emergence is the axiom. Trust in what emerges from the data. Trust in people's lived experiences and their perception of those experiences. But what you do is, the goal of grounded theory is to find out what is the main concern of a group of people you want to know more about, and then your theory should explain how they're trying to continually resolve that concern. So it's very much in line.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like
theory entrepreneurship. I like it.
No, it is. I mean, like the really good entrepreneurs know that you come in, and you're probably going to start out. We're human beings, so there's no way we can start the process without certain assumptions.
Right.
Like they're just going to be there. But the most successful people will always be the ones that are open to serendipity, or open to the market proving them wrong, and then listening to what the market says is right, and then deciding whether they actually want to create that or not.
The exact same.
Yeah. So it's now I want to learn more about sort of your whole methodology.
No, I will. I'll give you something on, because it's exactly the same. And in fact, you evaluate a theory that's a grounded theory. One of the codes we live by is, and it's so much in line with entrepreneurship now that you've pointed this incredible thing out. A theory can never be as good, is only as good as its ability to work new data. So like a business would only be as good as its ability to address the evolving and changing needs of the market, right?
Which is where a lot of bigger companies get in huge trouble, because they started, and maybe they were actually really started, they understood the pain points, the needs of a market when they started, and they served them beautifully. But markets aren't stationary, like things. They're living, breathing beasts that move and change and morph, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. We've seen that in a profound way. And I've talked to so many people who are past what you probably consider classic entrepreneur, like real big established businesses, and their businesses are shrinking fast, and they're just thinking, we're going under, rather than, well, no, actually, all the assumptions that we built around are no longer valid. So we don't have to just keep trying to, work on that same model. We can actually look for where the pain points and the conversations have moved to, and see if we can adapt what we do and how we do it to those new needs. A lot of people don't want to do that. They're so vested in the way things were.
Right.
and they are terrified. And this is, I'm so curious what you think about this also. Most people who start businesses, they start them and they accept that there's a certain amount of uncertainty and risk and fear and anxiety and all this stuff and failure. And very often it's because part of the dynamic is they don't have a whole lot to lose in the beginning.
Right.
Then they build something substantial. Now they do have a lot to lose. So when I was talking about like that business that now has to adapt to a whole different thing, now that they're in a place where they don't have, there's a lot to lose if they, sort of like guess wrong, or they don't, they become incredibly fearful in a way that they didn't, or they're not able to move through the fear and the change and the uncertainty in a way that they were much more able to when they started a business, which really ties in, I think, with a lot of your exploration of vulnerability.
Yeah, you're going to be hard-pressed to get me shaking loose this parallel between business, and I'm so obsessed with it now. It's so fascinating because, the axiom, again, of trust in the emergence is, I think what I've seen in my experience talking to businesses and talking to not just entrepreneurs but big corporations is they don't trust in the process that brought them success.
Yeah.
They start to trust in the product of the process.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And they lose their trust for the process, which is trust in emergence, trust the people you're serving. And so the same is true with researchers. Like for me, the minute I say, I don't care what emerges from this interview with Jonathon, I've already got a theory out there in the academic literature, this has got to hold up. And the minute I shift, my work is dead. It no longer rings true, it's not innovative, it's not exciting. And so, but, Barney Glaser, one of the founders of grounded theory, calls it the drugless trip. You have to have a real comfort with uncertainty and vulnerability to do the kind of research I do. You lose a lot. I mentor a lot of doctoral students and sit on a lot of dissertations for grounded theory folks who get halfway through and think, this is too uncertain. I want to go back to the take an existing theory, prove or disprove it with data, write it up, be done. I don't want to trust in emergence and let something new and that we haven't talked about yet emerge. I don't have the stomach for it.
Nah.
And so for me, the vulnerability piece, and I get that because I was that person. And so
I think we're all that person.
We're all that person, yeah. And that's important because
it's not like I mean, maybe there are these freakish people, like this really thin slice of humanity that just doesn't feel it, or their brains are soft wired from the beginning to process it differently. But most of us, it hurts.
It does hurt, and to say I wasn't one of those people is exactly against, I have the 4 myths of vulnerability in Daring Greatly, and the first one is that it's weakness.
Yeah.
And I define vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure.
Right.
And so I think one of the reasons we lose tolerance for it, or we can't sit with the process, is because we've been raised to believe that being vulnerable and walking into a meeting with, funders or whomever or whatever your situation is and saying, I don't know. I mean, some of the most incredible examples that I read and include in the book are about business people who stand up in front of their leadership and say, I don't know what to do next. And you may know more than I do. I need your help. That's powerful.
Yeah. And that is the single most terrifying thing that I think any leader could do, but also maybe the most powerful thing they could do simultaneously.
It's really interesting.
But I think, like you were saying though, people think it's all, if I do that, I'm weak.
Right. Pete Fuda, who is a leadership, he's a researcher in Australia in Sydney, and he studies transformative leadership. And he does long case studies over 5 and 6 years studying leadership and how it transforms within an organization. And he has this great article that was in Harvard Business Review where he uses metaphors to talk about what transformative leaders share in common. And one of them is the snowball. And he tells the story of a CEO, a new CEO, who kind of came aboard and was very directive, very instructive, and things really started unraveling. And he decided to kind of risk vulnerability and stood up in front of, brought all of his leaders together and said, I'm getting feedback that my style, the way I communicate and give you feedback, is pushing innovation down. I need your help. I need to know how to be better at this. I need to know how to work with you. And what Pete found in his research, not only in this case, but across the cultures he was studying, is that it created this huge snowball effect. That those leaders in turn felt permission to stand with their teams and say, I can't do this without you. And those people, and then it created this thing that took off through the culture. And what it shook loose was, it got so big and fast, the momentum of it, that it shook loose all the drag. That people that were not willing to say, I need help, I don't know, I'm in over my head, couldn't hold on anymore in the culture. Is that fascinating?
Yeah.